At the tone, please record your message. When you have finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options.
Steven, I thought you'd find this funny. When we landed from Las Vegas, the guy, the flight attendant gets on and he goes, if you're awaiting a wheelchair, I just want to let you know that the wheelchairs aren't here yet, so please remain seated. Yeah, that's what he said. It's like, say, Jaleel, wait! But, you know, I love Jaleel. Okay, bye.
This is your flight attendant talking. If you are in need of a wheelchair and you have no legs, you're going to have to wait, so remain seated. Don't stand up.
Oh my God.
I chuckled. I laughed. The people around me were a little more hesitant, but I was
Did they
like,
literally use
funny.
those words? Remain seated?
Remain seated.
Oh, come on.
I mean, I know what he meant.
I
know what he meant. It's for the people that need extra time or need a little bit of help off the plane.
They could still walk, but they have a hard time, yeah.
Right. And see, Jaleel has his own wheelchair, but he can't fly with it.
He can't walk, though, literally, yeah.
No, Jaleel can't walk. But the wheelchair, they usually wheel his back on, or they don't wheel his back on because they have a special one that helps you get through the aisle, which is very difficult to do.
Thinner one or something, right? More narrow wheelchair?
Yeah, more narrow, which would be very difficult if you can't, I keep seeing that Instagram video of that girl, the woman, plus size. I don't even want to say plus. I'm kind of tired of hearing plus size model. No, I'm just tired of hearing plus size. Steven shook his head. You guys aren't watching this because he's like, oh, here he goes again.
Never heard this before.
No, but I'm tired of everybody being called a plus size model. Like, if you're plus size, you're fucking plus size. Like, no big deal. You're plus size. Like, just because, but they feel like you got to call someone a model because they wear a muumuu or something. And it's like, no. Anyway, I was just saying it's very difficult still to get through the plane. I had an occurrence with a larger passenger next to me. I was in the middle row. Sorry, the middle aisle.
The worst seat ever.
The middle seat. I chose the middle seat because it was an exit row.
Wait. Not first class? Who are you?
I didn't get upgraded. but on the A321 Neo and the A737 8 Series 8s or whatever they are, the 800s, there's a lot of extra space. There's 2 feet in front of you, which is fine.
Sure.
So that's why I didn't have a problem taking the middle, because when I booked my flight, all the stuff was really gone, and that's what I got to take, but it was totally fine. A fairly large guy sat next to me, and we know you and I talk about the center seat. I always say that the person in the center seat has full access to the armrests wherever they want to put their arms. They own it. They're
agree.
in the middle.
Yeah.
And then I will work around them. I did hear about some planes, they will be enlarging the center seat ever so slightly just because a little bit of extra room. But I didn't even have the option of having the right arm. I was on the right side of the plane. I didn't even have the option of the right armrest because the guy's body was overflowing the armrest. But I did maintain my space, and I did plant my shoulder squarely into his body because it's my space.
Sure, and it's already a small space to begin with. And the worst, too, is when they're creeping over with their legs, too. Like, their thighs are basically touching yours in your space, like you're saying.
Yeah, I didn't want to say anything, and I know it's a very delicate subject. I understand that the person absolutely is sitting there worrying about getting on a plane, worrying
exactly
that they're going to be sitting next to someone and understand it. I get it. The snack on the plane, though, he started with a bag of Fritos, followed by M&Ms with peanuts and Coke and other stuff.
My favorite.
That's not good snacks for
well, you know what's the best though is when people bring smelly food like salmon onto a plane and have a whole meal, and it just stinks up the entire cabin. But you don't do that, right?
Nah, man, I bring an everything bagel.
Yeah, right. You used to do the salmon and all the smelliest foods, and you'd be like, I don't care.
It's not a super smelly food.
Yes,
it's not
is.
like
fish.
No, it was whatever. It was cold, so it really wasn't smelly. Whatever. I needed to eat. So anyway, that was my thing. My shoulder was embedded in the guy's body, and I get it. It's a difficult situation.
Yeah.
for someone to fly like that and worry about. I totally can.
Well, and like you said,
understand
he's probably having anxiety the entire time prepping for the flight and getting onto the plane, and I'm sure he knows he's making you uncomfortable, and it's just an uncomfortable situation for everybody.
Yeah. So I didn't have an armrest, but I did maintain my legs. Like you're not gonna take my leg space,
dude. This was leg day, man. You're not beating me over here. I got you.
No, it was Thursday, so it wasn't leg day. But no, I it is what it is.
Well, it was the day after leg day, though.
True. I was a little sore, so it's a little different. All right, guys. This is episode number 61, I believe. So we're in 61. We've got some stuff to talk about, like me traveling to Vegas to shoot slam ball. That was an experience. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about me shooting yesterday at the Phillies game with the R100 and a 100 to 400 5.6 to f8.
Wow.
New Tamron lens for Nikon, which is pretty damn exciting. Mm-hmm. And Steven's birthday.
Oh, I'm an old
Steven
man now.
Steven had a birthday.
Yeah, 35 years old.
I mean, just wait till you have kids.
Just wait till I have kids.
Just wait till you have kids.
I share my birthday with my godson, my nephew, James, so it's usually all about him that day. And during the weekend, we usually have his birthday party and not really so much mine. But hey, I'm a 35-year-old man. I'm not 4 years old, so I get it.
I'm 4 years old. How old are you? 4.
I don't really celebrate my birthday, though. I'm kind of just like, I'm working during it half the time. We usually don't do like dinner dates or anything. I don't really care about it. I've never really celebrated it growing up, maybe because I had such a big family and so many siblings. It didn't really matter.
Did you impregnate your wife?
About 8 months ago, I did, yes.
Just checking. My favorite is like, I used this really stupid joke. I should probably, whatever, I'll say it because I just say stupid jokes all the time. There was this woman, I was in this group thing and she was pregnant, and then she came over, or we had a meeting, and I'm like, yeah, meeting went well. She left pregnant. She also showed up pregnant too, but she left pregnant. And it's just like, so people are like, what do you mean? I'm like, oh no, she was already pregnant when she got here. So she just left the same way she did. But people instantly go to that other place because I did. Because that's what I do.
You know.
So let's talk about Las Vegas, because that's where I flew to Las Vegas for slam ball.
Nice and hot, huh?
No, dude, it was only 114 when I walked to get pho.
I'd probably die. I'd literally die on the sidewalk.
I'd
turn into a puddle.
As people say, it's a dry heat versus the 90.
I will say, I'll take dry heat over humidity all day, because the humidity is what kills me. That stale, ugh.
Yeah, but it's not stale. It's wet. It's hot and wet,
but it's
and
stale,
swampy
wet air where there's
it's
no
swampy.
breeze. It's swampy. Yeah, the dew point's insane. It's tropical weather, basically.
Well, the difference between the breeze, so when you get to Vegas, that breeze is like someone turned on a
Fire.
hairdryer.
Yeah,
it's
the
like
boiler.
A hairdryer. It's great for my hair. I mean, it's great. So yeah, I ended up walking to get pho in 114 degrees because I didn't like the lunch option at the slam ball event. It was hot dogs and hamburgers and French fries.
Yes.
Not my nutritional value, but I did actually eat at this pho place I noticed across the street. The last time I was there by accident, we showed up and I found a pho place and it was awesome.
What number was it?
No, it wasn't pho 75 or pho 82. It was Hung Wang, Hung something, Hung Tang, Thang Long. Thang Long. I think it's Thang Long.
Is that how you pronounce
pho.
it too?
Yeah, Thang Long Pho. I don't know what you're talking about, Steven. So I go to walk, and I'm like, oh, it's not that far. It says it's like an 11-minute walk. But I start to walk, and it's taking me around the perimeter of the parking lot instead of having me cut through the parking lot. So I'm baking. I am wearing long pants, by the way.
And you had it on the walking setting on Google Maps, not like the car or bike setting?
I did. I had it on walking, but I was walking through a parking lot of the Cox Pavilion, and then I realized as I was walking around I could have just cut this way. So when I walked back, I knew that I could. There's a shaded area I could walk for a block here, cross the street, cut up here, walk through a garage, one of the parking garages for like 2 football fields, and then it's like a 2-minute walk from there. So I did it right, but I went to go have pho in 114 degrees because I like pho.
I love how you're telling me how you got there and how you had to walk through shade and how smart you are because you chose the shaded route.
Dude, I'm walking and I'm like, you could be dead out here real easy.
That's probably why there's not many homeless people out in Vegas, right?
No, they were laying on the ground when I got to where I was going.
Well, I'm just saying, usually it's like California, like Southern California, where it's like 70 degrees all day, every day.
Steven, I remembered something before I talk about slam ball and shooting all of that. There was a comment the other day on what was our last Sony video, the A6700.
Yes.
Right? And someone left a comment like, how did you not tell us that the camera doesn't come with a charging cable or a charger?
Seriously?
And I responded back. I'm like, well, one, how the fuck are we supposed to know when it's a pre-production model? It's not like Sony sends us a production unit.
We typically get just white unlabeled boxes that aren't production boxes. We don't know what the final product is going to come with. They usually don't tell us that kind of information. Plus, I don't think it really matters. Everything's USB-C PD powered these days. Just get any wall charger and pop it in and call it a day. Like, it doesn't really matter. They're going to charge just as fast as a regular battery charger.
Yeah. Do I like having a charger? Sure. But when I'm traveling with my R3s, I don't take the big charger with me, which takes up more space, takes up space from a lens. I don't take the charger. I just take my laptop charging brick or any USB-C charging brick and plug it in, and it charges it up in the camera.
Now, it is a pain because you're kind of limited to one battery for the most part. You can't really separately charge another battery.
Two cameras.
Or if you have two cameras, yeah, but not everyone has that. But I also think that most of the latest round of Sony cameras, I could be wrong, I'm pretty sure they all don't come with an actual charger anymore. I think it's just like a USB-C cable. I think you have to buy that separately.
Sure. I'm not sure. But at this point, it's like if you don't have a charging, like every cell phone has comes with a brick and a cable, and you can just do that, like everything. It's not that big of a deal.
And now even Apple has the USB-C bricks that they come with. So if you have an iPhone 12, 13, 14, you should have a USB-C brick somewhere. And it's a fast charging brick, so that's nice.
Yeah. So anyway, that was a side note. So I was out in Vegas to shoot the start of Slam Ball, their first games. That's why I flew out there. They were like, I just said I would come out and shoot the first games, and it's definitely a challenge. They did it at the Cox Pavilion, which is where they did do some summer league basketball a week before, and it's interesting because good lights, good LED lights up there, but they put two spotlights out. They put one spotlight on the one backboard. They put one spotlight on the other backboard. And if you are trying to shoot from the corner up, it is just straight banding no matter what you do, because that LED that they're using is flickering at some weird thing. You can see in my photos when a player jumps above the rim on that basket, you can see a little bit of the difference of the light. It becomes mixed lighting because of how weird that was. That was a difficult situation for me to shoot in.
Did you try dialing in the R3 or using, because they have the auto setting where it'll auto find the correct frequency shutter to use, but sometimes it doesn't work great when
You'll have to show me where that is. Because when I noticed it for the one picture I was trying to take of the officials just at center court doing a group shot, I had to do it quickly. I didn't even know it, so I actually switched into mechanical shutter.
Okay.
Real quick, because I'm like, I got to go mechanical for this. It's going to be easier.
Yeah, if you go into the high frequency flicker reduction or something like that, when it's the electronic shutter mode, which is pretty much by default in the R3, I believe it has an auto detect feature, which it should read the scene for a few seconds and then auto detect what the best shutter speed to be at to get rid of the flicker. But if you're dealing with obviously multiple different types of LED lights with different flickers, then you're not going to be able to counteract that anyway. So sometimes you're screwed either way.
Yeah, I need to definitely try that. But shooting it, I used the 70 to 200 2.8 a little bit. I used the 85 1.2 quite a bit. I used the 135 1.8 a little bit. But, I posted a photo that I did with the 85 1.2 at 1.2, and I'm like, this is why you shoot sports at 1.2.
Sure.
And some people misconstrue that idea, and they're like, oh, you don't need to do that at 1.2. Why does it even matter?
Well, if you can,
and it's like,
why not?
Like, well, one, I can, and two, the images, no pun intended, separate me from everybody else's image. No one else is shooting an 85 1.2. No one else out there is doing that for sports, or even the 28 to 70 f2.
Plus, you're not really there for live coverage and to get every single thing that happens on the court. You're there more for yourself and shooting for yourself for the most part. So it doesn't really matter if you happen to miss some shots because you're a little too tight with an 85 1.2 or a 135 1.8. Like, at the end of the day. Now, I think a normal quote-unquote sports photographer might need to be a little wide and a little more stopped down with a normal zoom lens to make sure they catch every single piece of the action. But again, it's a little different with your situation.
It was, and with what I did, I rather have done. I mean, the stuff with the 7200 is good, but I'll say the 8512 is gooder. Yeah, it's
Welcome
gooder.
to Good Burger, home of the Good Burger.
Welcome to Good Burger, home of the Good Burger. How may
Can I take your
order, please? Go take your order. So with the separation that you get with that, and the fact that you can lock on and track guys flying through the air with the 8512 and nail it is still a testament to how good that autofocus is. The results looked fantastic when I was editing those.
And some people will say, autofocus systems these days tend to cater towards more light-skinned individuals, and obviously a lot of the players there were dark-skinned. Did you have any problem with that? Did it still seem to keep up? Was there enough light, because it's a dark background with dark skin. It's a little tough.
So, good question. I mean, it was like 99% of the athletes in slam ball are darker skinned. There's like 3 white guys in the league or something. Yeah.
And exposure-wise, it's got to be tough too. If you have a white guy next to a black guy, it's a little tough.
Well, exposure-wise, from a light-skinned black person to a dark-skinned black person to a white person is extremely difficult.
Yep.
I just try to find a happy medium and then just tweak later.
That's all you can do
for that.
Yeah.
Because there's times where there's one guy and he's a very dark-skinned individual, and it makes it. I'm not going to change my exposure just for that. I know I can have that extra stop later or just do what I need to do to bring it back. But it's an interesting thing to shoot. It does get repetitive. Sports all get repetitive. That's why I don't like to redo the same things over. Baseball gets repetitive. It's just over and over and over the same thing. But I was very happy with the results. The funny thing is I sent it over to the slam ball people, and the text I got back was, Jared, these are all capital with 4 exclamation points, right? Yeah, 4. Amazing, right? Then under that it goes, what did you do to get the colors to pop like that?
Oh,
My reply was,
wonder.
it's called Skittles, because Thick wasn't out yet.
You're
but it's
welcome.
called Skittles. But no, I replied, and their reply was, can we get that LUT for video?
Like for the broadcast video on ESPN? Wow, that's funny.
They're like, can we get the, because it was broadcast on ESPN and then ESPN Plus, but this brings up a whole nother thing for me. I always talk about this with sports sports images. They look so bland and boring because no one takes the time, and then no one takes. Let me finish my statement, Jared. No one takes the time to tweak their files before putting it out into the world, or no one takes the time after they transmit to put it out into the world. This is no different than when you used to shoot concerts and you would then take a couple of seconds and throw a preset on there. There's a reason. Go ahead.
Well, so for concerts, for example, like I had to put up an image usually while the show was still going on, just for some content for the radio station. So I usually had to get it up within the first 5-6 songs, give or take. There was times back in the day when I was still using my 5D Mark II and 3 that I just had to take a picture of like the back of the screen because you couldn't even transfer it because they didn't even have Wi-Fi back then. But, obviously times evolved and Wi-Fi became a thing. So I would quickly transfer to my phone, go into Lightroom Mobile, throw a preset on there, call it a day, and upload them. And then later, obviously for the final gallery, I would make sure to properly edit them in Lightroom Classic or something like that on a desktop and make sure everything looked great. But yeah, there's times where you just don't have time. Literally no time for those sports shooters or concert shooters or just event photographers.
No, I get it. I get that they don't have time, but someone should take the 3 seconds. It doesn't take very long to do it.
So when you say somebody, for example, when we would do our big birthday concert, it was our big show of the year, and we'd have all these big headlining acts. We actually would have a digital team backstage that would be live editing photos. Now, granted, they were not my favorite editors, let's just say that, but I would have card runners that would come and pick my card up from the photo pit, run it back to the editor, they would throw some presets on it, and then upload them in real time almost. So that's one solution, but obviously that's not for everybody, especially if you're working for yourself.
But I just get tired of seeing sports images and people are posting like fire emoji, and then you look at it and you're like, I mean, it's an action shot of something happening, and I'm not saying mine are any better. I'm just commenting about sports. But what makes mine slightly better is that they always look better in terms of the processing. And so you see a great shot, you're like, well, why didn't you, before you posted it to Instagram, reprocess the RAW file or even your JPEG?
What I don't get to this day is why camera companies don't have some sort of LUT input system on a camera that you can now input your own preset, and it could be proprietary, whatever. If you need me to use DPP or Sony's Edge or Nikon's whatever they call it on their end, so I can manually install my own custom picture profile that will slap it onto a RAW file and make it into a JPEG and export it. Like if I could do Skittles, put that in the camera, select that as my picture style, and then boom, call it a day, and you almost have perfect pictures right out of camera. I just wish they would do that like they do, like Sony does, for example, with their FX series cameras. You can put your own LUT, you can install it in camera and view it in camera and export it in camera that way.
Yeah. I mean, that's my biggest thing with sports images is I'm constantly having people look at the images and going, how did you get them to look like this? And how did you get them to pop? And why? I'm like, well, one, I'm shooting RAW.
Yeah.
Two, I'm taking the time to actually tweak the files. And I get that shit has to get out into the world quickly. But I think if you waited another 12 seconds for some of the sports things, it would be totally fine to just put it out 12 seconds later after you did a quick little tweak on your computer. Even these guys are transmitting. Sometimes they go back to their computer, Steven. There's no reason they can't tweak it before it uploads.
Yeah, I mean, even if you're not, if you're just syncing them across the board, if you're still shooting RAW, sync it across the board with a general preset, as long as your exposure is pretty spot on, which usually these photographers, these sports guys, it's usually spot on because they're in some kind of auto mode, you know, whether it be shutter priority or something like that. And these days, you can easily import and export super fast in Lightroom. Why can't they do that all the time? Again, it can wait a few extra seconds or minutes. It's not a big deal.
Exactly. So, you know, Slam Ball went well. I shot the first day. There was 6 games. I actually left after the 4th game halfway through because I was just like, I'm out.
6 games in a row?
Well, they started at 4 to 6. There were 3 games from 4 to 6. Then there were from 6:30. There was a 30-minute break in the middle. There were more games. There were more teams. There's like 8 teams.
How long is each game?
Well, each quarter is 5 minutes. So the games are 30 minutes at the most. So they're not long and they're fast action. And there's some tweaks they're going to make to make its flow better. And so I ended up leaving at that point because I just had enough. You know, it gets to become the same thing. And the crazy thing is, like, I get overwhelmed with it because I'm shooting the same thing over and over, and I'm like, I'm just blah, blah, blah. And then when I get to the computer and I start editing them and I see my results, I'm like, damn, these are good. Like, then I start to feel better. But that does happen to me a lot. I get discouraged. Like, I want to see my results. Did my results work? And you have the 3-inch screen, but it's not the same as being like, oh, I'm sitting there even on my laptop going, damn, getting the final results are great.
Yeah, and it's tough, like you were saying, kind of doing the same thing over and over again. You run out of creative ideas at a certain point. You know, you get every angle you possibly can while you're there, and then it's kind of just the same shit over and over and over again. I don't know how these sports guys do it all the time.
Bruce Bennett,
yeah,
50 years of shooting hockey. I'm like, Bruce, I don't know
how
the
same stuff half the time, unless it's an exciting game like the playoffs or the Stanley Cup or something like that. That's a different story, but
it gets monotonous. It really does. So the thing with Slam Ball is I actually got a message from the Slam Ball people yesterday asking if I wanted to shoot all of the games, the rest of the games for them.
Be the official Slam Ball photographer?
They didn't use those words, but when I went there on Friday, right, I got there 5-6 hours before the game started because I knew that there was the ESPN truck going on the truck. I wanted to do the behind the scenes of the proprietors, the people that are putting on Slam Ball. So I did all of that to get the best story. I said to them about doing all the photos for Slam Ball. I'm like, well, I'm in Philly. They have games today, right? Yeah, they have games today, tomorrow, Saturday. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'm like, well, I'm not gonna be there, right? I'm in Philly. Yeah. Plus, we've got a lot going on. We've got a move coming up to the new studio, so we're packing, we're preparing for that, which we've already talked about. So I don't know when I would be able to actually cover their events because it's not like I'm going to fly out every week for 4 days, 3 days, fly home for 3 days, and then fly back to Vegas to do this, unless they really, 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 really wanted it.
I was going to say, are there any particular big games that they might want you there for?
No, they're just games right now. Maybe the playoffs, maybe the finals, but we'll see how that falls because I'm trying to shoot the U.S. Open. So it all depends on how all this stuff falls. There's a lot going on right now that I'm trying to lock down for other projects that are good projects that have come out of doing the Slam Ball stuff. Speaking of funny things that came out of Slam Ball stuff, Steven, you know how I was just saying that I get discouraged and I left the game early? Like, I didn't leave. I just didn't want to stay the whole time because it got monotonous for me.
Same thing over and over again.
And it gets mental. I almost flew home early on Saturday. No, was it Saturday? Yeah, I almost flew home Saturday instead of staying till Sunday.
Let me preface this too. You told me initially you were going, Thursday to Sunday? And in my head, I'm like, there's no way you're staying till Sunday. I guarantee you're going to be back, like, taking a red-eye Friday night or something and be home Saturday first thing. And you almost did, but yeah, continue that story.
Well, it doesn't happen all the time. This was different, like flying Thursday evening, so I knew I was going to shoot Friday, I knew I was going to shoot Saturday, and then take an early flight home Sunday. Because I don't really want to do the red-eyes. It's just not worth beating up my body for that extra couple hours I'll be home.
I've always said it, yeah. Red eyes are rough.
But I started to look into flights for Saturday because I didn't have anything planned, and they weren't playing till 7 o'clock at night, Slam Ball.
Oh, wow.
And this is at 7:30 in the morning or 6:30 when I woke up, and I'm like, I don't like this, and whatever. But I then got a message from Anthony Simonson. He's a professional bowler, one of the best bowlers ever, and he's super young. And he's like, thanks for the Slam Ball invite, right? And I forgot that he's in Vegas. Oh. So I'm like, oh, man. I'm like, do you want to go tonight? Like, I can get you tickets for tonight. And I'm like, what are you up to? He's like, well... And I think this is known, but he's like, Rolling Stone is doing an article on me. They have a writer here. And so I'm like, is there a
But
photographer?
Do they have a photographer?
I'm like, is there a photographer? He's like, let me check with the writer. He's like, oh, the writer's from Philly. And the writer lives in South Philly. So we live like sound? 10 minutes apart. Nah, I mean, I don't even know.
Use guys.
And you flap.
You got some water?
You would get a hoagie. You get a hoagie. Hey, can you phone Wawa and get a hoagie for on the way home? So anyway, he's like, nah, they didn't send a photographer. I'm like, okay, dude, I'll be there. Like, I don't even care if they use my images or not.
You just want
spend the
something
day
to
with
do.
you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, cool. So I go over there, and what I say to the photographer the writer, I'm like, look, did they have a writer? At first he was like, well, they had a writer, a photographer who was going to, something happened and the dates, they didn't lock it down. I'm like, so they have someone? He's like, well, no, I don't think they picked someone yet. Cause I'm like, look, I don't want to take money out of someone's pocket who was already going to be doing this, and through no fault of their own, the dates didn't work out. But when he was like, well, they didn't assign anybody yet, I'm like, well, in that case, like, you'll submit my images. If they pay me,
in that case, do you know who I am?
Yeah, but they'll probably only pay like $400 or $500 for this type of thing.
Yeah, and it's funny because you think of Rolling Stone, you're like, oh, it's probably like a couple $1,000. No,
the most I ever made was like $400 on a shoot.
Yeah.
When
they're only looking for like a single photo, maybe two,
Well, but this is a big article. This is like a 3,000 word article. So that's a big article that they're doing on him. So I spent the day with Anthony and the writer. We went and I did all the behind the scenes stuff. We ended up at his friend's house, who's a poker player, who has 2 bowling lanes in his kitchen. That was amazing. So that's where he goes to practice. So that's how he had access to a lane at all times because it was in his friend's house.
So with shooting for a magazine, which I guess it's going to be online, right? It's not really going to be a physical, tangible
No, it's
magazine,
they physically publish this still.
Oh, okay.
Bi-monthly.
Now, keeping in mind where the photo is going to be in the actual spread, like, do you ask him where they're going to place these photos? Do you need vertical, horizontal? Like, do they give you any tips? How's that work?
No, he has no clue. He's a writer. The photo editor and the photo people would do it.
Do you shoot a different way for a magazine?
Slightly.
Okay.
Slightly. I was very aware of, I want to use the word cognizant of the gutter. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
I was very cognizant of the gutter for horizontals. I was also possibly, so what I did, I don't crop, but what I did is leave them some extra room on, sometimes I would shoot a little wider, then zoom in more so they have multiple options in case they needed more room for putting it somewhere. I did a lot of rule of thirds stuff, so it left them space to put words and article to the right, or the left. I was very aware of it. I just don't know what they're looking for.
The beauty these days, though, is you can use something like generative AI fill in Photoshop, and you can still have a tight photo, and they can make it wider themselves. It's amazing.
So I did say that to you for the portrait that I did of him, where the background is just a blurred out mess because it's not a mess, but I shot it at 1:2.
But they can expand it.
I'm like, they could expand this background if they needed more room without a problem, and I have no problem with that for publication.
Sure.
If they're going to crop my image for publication, it's not my problem, right? That's what they choose to do. That's for them to do. I'm not going to sit there and be like, you can't crop it. I don't want them to, but it is what it is when it comes to a publication. So I'm still waiting to hear back if that's something that they're going to want to do. But, Stephen, I think after seeing my images, they're not going to need to send someone else.
Well, speaking of sending someone else or paying somebody, is this more of a pro bono gig, or are you actually going to get paid in the end?
For Rolling Stone?
For Rolling Stone.
I don't know. I'm waiting to hear back. I did it. I don't care.
No, but it is funny how all of this stems from your relationship with slam ball, which you started out shooting for free, and then potentially it could lead to jobs like being the official slam ball photographer or being a shoot, doing a shoot for Rolling Stone, whatever it may be. But yeah, sometimes it is worth going out there and putting yourself out there for free for a couple shoots just to get your foot in the door.
And that's the other point that I wanted to go into. I was ready to go home, but I was in a place, like, how am I supposed to know that on these days he was going to have a Rolling Stone writer there and I was going to so happen to be in the same place?
Perfect timing.
Like, just like when I went to LA a month ago, is like, I didn't know what was going to come of it. I put myself out there. I didn't have much to do. And all of a sudden I'm on set with Coach Raveling for his documentary, going to like invited to Nike to photograph Phil Knight, like all of this stuff. This stuff just comes out of nowhere.
Nothing to do with you though. It's fate. It's meant to be.
Jesus? Jesus, is that you?
No, I'm totally kidding. You did everything to make yourself there.
Are you putting people into my life because it's Jesus? No. It's just, you put yourself out there, you never know what's going to happen. And it brings up that whole discussion about doing work for nothing. I remember Chase Jarvis for years was super big into telling people you never do work for free.
Really?
Never.
Huh.
Never, ever, never work for free. No, I'm pretty sure I recall this correctly from his videos, is like, you don't, that devalues you and all that. I look at it differently. There's certain things that, is there value for you? Does it give you access to something you wouldn't have had access to before? Like me going out and shooting slam ball, or actually me going to connecting randomly with a guy in a park, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but that time where I went with my brother and the niece and nephew to photograph, to test out a new Sony lens, and a guy comes up to me who is there with his kids and goes, "Oh, what are you doing? What do you do?" And I'm like, "I do YouTube videos." He's like, "I do The Last Dance. I'm a producer." And he's like, "What are you working on?" So he's just like, "What are you working on?" I showed him what I was working on, and he's like, "Can I send this to these people who did this?"
What are the odds?
Yeah. Right, just random. So you just don't know where this shit's going to happen, but you have to put yourself in those situations.
Like you said, I think it's much different for you too, because on top of that, even if you don't get anything out of it necessarily in terms of like, a job offer or getting paid or something like that, we're still getting paid with content at the end of the day. Correct. For the channel,
for me,
whether it be a lens review, review for a camera, body itself, something like that. Yeah, it's much different for you to shoot for free, because in the end, it's not really free.
Well, and also I will not be becoming an official photographer of slam ball.
No.
If I'm available and I'm able to shoot, then yes, because it still falls under, and I don't mean this in a pretentious way, and I try to explain this to people. Well, there's multiple parts of it. One, I want to get paid a lot of money for what I do. That's one thing.
$30,000 an hour, right?
But on the flip side, I rather shoot for nothing and be in control of everything than someone offer me $150 to do something for 8 hours.
Not even worth it.
I look at that as a slap in the face. You want to offer me $150? No. I do it for nothing, because it just means more at that point. But in terms of being an official photographer for anything, I always have the statement, and this is just what I've been living by for a long time now, is I do not want to be beholden to someone else's expectations. That's why I find it very difficult to work for someone, is because when you work for someone else, there's an expectation, and I do not want to be beholden to someone else's. Now, there's been times, of course, in the past, sometimes you do the things you don't want to do to afford the things that you do want to do. Mm-hmm. So before I owned 5 buildings and 7 Porsches and 8 Lamborghinis, I did take those
everybody. There it is.
I did those things like shooting weddings to allow me the ability to get to a position where I think every photographer and creative wants to get to, or whether you're a photographer or creative, you want to get to a position where you don't need to rely on doing a job that you don't want to do.
Agreed.
So if I'm able to go do the slam ball stuff and they want me out there, then sure, I'll go do it. But if I can, but the great thing is, I can use it to test gear, and I can use it as a conduit to run into these other situations because I put myself into a place to be successful.
Yeah, it's a write-off at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, great. Still my own money. I still spent $1,000 to go, between flights. I mean, I didn't pay for the hotel room because they put me up. The Caesars people, the same people that put me at the Rio and the Flamingo, we do a trade. I do social media posts, and they put me in a beautiful suite that was purple.
Well, just sell a building and buy a private jet, and you're set, man.
I don't have enough for a private jet, Steven.
Now, speaking of Slam Ball, though, are they only located in Vegas, only doing games in Vegas? So not a traveling sport? Okay.
It's not a traveling roadshow. It's a little more difficult to move that court around everywhere. They have one court with the trampoline. It would be very difficult to move that. You would need it would be like a concert. You need trucks and everything to move that stuff from place to place.
Yeah, it's not like there's Slam Ball stadiums all around the country.
No. So the moral of the story is I almost went home early. Thankfully, I have very difficult time of planning things to do in places, but I was lucky enough that my friend reached out to me, and it was just odd enough that a Rolling Stone thing was going on, and I just so happened to be there to do it.
And you were showing me some of the photos when you got back, and the one you were testing out one of the new presets on it called Thick with 3 C's. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so you sent me in the morning. The morning I was editing some of the Rolling Stone stuff, I got the preset, and I clicked on Thick, and I was like, damn.
Dude, when I made that, I'm like, this is going to be your new favorite one.
Well, so the interesting thing is there's Thick, we just named this other one Kaleidoscope. Mm-hmm. We can go over the names in a minute because I actually put that in the notes. You can go over the names. And then people are going to be like, what about Skittles? Are you still going to use Skittles? The crazy thing is, when Steven was showing me all the new presets, I'm like, isn't that like this? And then he shows me the other one. I'm like, oh no, it's actually not.
Exactly.
They're all unique and different.
Yep.
So Skittles still has a place for certain things. I've noticed that Thick is thick, like it crunches the contrast.
Exactly.
Let me explain it.
Oh, good, because you made it.
Yeah, let me just explain what I think, and then you can tell me whether it's right or not.
All right, let's do that.
So when I click on Thick for certain things, the backgrounds are definitely darker. They are more contrasty. The highlights aren't there. And then when you click on something like Kaleidoscope or Skittles, it's bringing up highlights in certain areas, shadows up in certain areas. So it's different. It's not as thick, and they both serve a purpose. Sometimes one is going to be better for my sports stuff, and other times the other is going to be better for just random stuff.
Yep, correct. Yeah. Now with Thick, like you said, there's going to be less dynamic range. You're not going to see the full highlights or the full blacks. You're going to see a very steep S-curve, probably the steepest S-curve I've ever done. So it's going to be extra thick contrast. And on top of that, I oversaturated the camera profile settings in Lightroom Classic as well. So every color is going to be kind of boomified at that point. So yeah, it's going to be a very thick, saturated image at the end of the day, which is what you love. And since you do prefer the high contrast, again, you're going to lose a lot of dynamic range. It's going to be more like a 10 stop image in terms of dynamic range instead of like a 14 or 15 stop dynamic range image. Now, if you're shooting landscapes, that's where I would go to Kaleidoscope or Skittles, where it's going to be better with, more dynamic range images where you need the highlights and you need the shadows and everything, and you really need to get the most out of your image.
Yeah. So what we're talking about here is FroPack 4 is on the way.
It's done.
FroPack
complete.
Well, yeah, it's done. We're about ready to get the sales pages up and get it out to some testers to test. I've been testing it, and FroPack 3 will go off of sale, which means it won't be $30 anymore. It's going to go up to $50. It's always on sale till the next one comes out. That's just how we do it. That's how we do it. And then we take it off. So FroPack 4, we're still determining the price of that at launch time, but we know that the Grand Slam, for anybody that hasn't gotten it, is going to be $120 because it was $90 for the triple play, which we called did we call it the triple play?
We did, the triple play
bundle. Yeah. Right. And then the Grand Slam is going to be $120. We're still figuring out some of the rest of it.
And just to be clear, the Grand Slam is all 4 preset packs. So it's FroPack 1, 2, 3, and 4, which total to be about 60 presets all in.
It's a lot, and they're all unique. And so that would be normally $200 because we sell them for $50 each. This time you're getting in the entire discount. Each one is $30s, which is the launch sale price that they've been. So if you haven't picked it up, you're going to be able to get that. And then if you have FroPack 1, 2, and 3, awesome. You're going to be able to purchase the
FroPack 4 separately.
FroPack 4 separately as a download and be all set with that. Do you want to run through the names real fast?
Sure. So there's 14.
Because this is a reveal. There's a worldwide reveal.
Exclusive.
Worldwide.
Exclusive.
Slam Ball. Ooh. Never been done before.
So 14 total presets. Now, there obviously are some variations, like some have no grain, with grain, no vignette, with vignette, matte
which
finish
means you
versus
get
high
more.
contrast.
You end up with more, but we don't count those variations like other people do.
Correct, because
as
it's
full-on
literally
presets.
like the press of a button. You could just easily turn that slider on and off if you wanted to do it manually, but we just make it a little easier if you just want to hover over them quickly. So we're not going to consider them like 30 presets when there's really only 14. Anyway, starting from the top, we have Coppertone. Then we've got Brooklyn.
Coppertone's the top one?
Yes.
That's good. People.
Coppertone is my personal favorite. I'll tell you that.
I did send it to someone, Steven. I'm sorry. I did send someone
What
to
did they
play
say?
with it. He said, tell Steven that he outdid himself again, that this is the best pack yet. He's like, Coppertone, he's like, I freaking love that. It even works underwater, for his underwater stuff.
Oh,
he's like,
do I know who you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's like, tell Steven these are the best yet. Again, and he goes, what I love about your presets is they actually work.
Yeah.
He's like, I have other people's packs and they just don't work. And every time I use a Fro pack, whether it's 1, 2, 3, and now 4, they work. And I'm not trying to hard sell anybody here. This is just the facts.
Well, and I've said it before. I mean, it's not like I just slap this on one image and call it a day and make a preset out of it. I tested on several different images, hundreds of images, thousands if that, and I try to find a middle ground where it looks the best and really can be applied to anything. It's not doing crazy overall exposure adjustments. It's not doing crazy color adjustments. I try to keep it that middle of the road where it really makes a impact on the image, but it's not, you don't have to underexpose your image 2 stops to make it work.
All right, hit the list.
Anyway, we have Coppertone, Brooklyn, Kaleidoscope, Blues Clues, C41, High C, Wet Hot American Summer, Saltwater Taffy, DeLorean, Thick with 3 C's in all caps, Mel Brooks, Tintype, and then we have 2 adaptive presets, Face Enhance and Background Blur. And I also added like an iris pop and a full body enhance too, if you take more of a loose portrait and you want the entire skin to be a little more on the smooth side and not as gritty and harsh. And the great thing is you can add these adaptive presets on top of a normal preset like Coppertone, and then if that's a little harsh on the face, it'll basically beautify the face and make it a little softer. And what's great about Lightroom Classic is you can have the preset slider and adjust the overall amount of the preset. So you can make it less harsh, more harsh, whatever you want it to do. And same thing with the adaptive presets. You can go in there and adjust the masking too if you want it a little more of a manual setup, or if it's selecting the wrong subject or something like that.
What I'll say about the adaptive presets is they'll work all, Fro Pack 1, 2, and 3. They'll work on anything that you do. The crazy thing about what Steven created for the adaptive preset for people, so when I did my portrait, and I clicked on the adaptive preset, the AI works real fast in Lightroom, and then it creates a mask.
It's not like the AI is doing everything. It's just simply auto masking it for you. It's taking that hard work of masking out that part of the subject, like the eyes or the face or whatever it may be. The actual preset itself, where the adjustments are made, I did all of those fine adjustments myself and made a custom preset, but the AI part is just the masking itself.
Yeah, so basically what's happening, and it's great that Steven did this because it saves you a ton of time. You click on this, it finds the eyes, it finds the whites of the eyes, it finds the teeth, the lips, the hair, the skin.
Facial
when
hair.
you're doing a portrait.
Yep.
Yeah, facial hair. It finds all of this, which means you can go in and turn each one of these off if you just want to do the face, and you can go and just tweak the face, and it's amazing for portraits. And I asked Steven to do one for me just for the eyes because, I could turn off the other ones easily, but I just wanted to be able to one click to be able to go into the eyes and touch them up.
But what I like about that preset is, again, you can go in there and turn, like you said, turn certain masks off and on, but you can also adjust certain masks. So if you're taking a portrait of a male versus a female, you might want it to be more of a harsher, grittier skin than a soft skin.
The example we have for the website is going to look awesome.
Correct. So you can go in there and basically adjust that softened skin setting and make it less harsh or more harsh, depending on your subject.
Yep. So we're excited to get these out.
It's been a long time in the making, for sure.
You think about, people talk about presets like, oh, you're greedy and you're just trying to make money, and you said you would never do them, which is what I did say those years ago, until I realized that, just like I was saying earlier, people do a real terrible job editing their images. 1, they don't know where to start. 2, they don't know what they're doing. And if you do need something quick, like when I shot the baseball game yesterday, and we'll talk about the camera I used later, and I came home and I started to put thick on the images, in a matter of minutes, I was done editing my keepers. Minutes. I was done editing. I selected the ones I wanted. I did my edits. I synced the ones. Maybe had to tweak a couple of exposures here and there.
Sure.
And I was done. And do you see how good they look?
Yeah.
That's the point of the presets.
And hey, we strive for, one click and done, but we try not to really advertise them like that because you do have to still go in there sometimes and make subtle tweaks. But I really try to make it like one click. As long as your exposure and white balance is set first, it's correctly exposed, and the white balance is pretty much what it really should be, unless you're getting a little more artistic with it, then the preset should pretty much work with one click, unless you're looking for, lifted shadows or something like that more specific. But back to people editing their photos and not doing a great job with them. And I just think overall Lightroom can be very intimidating to a new photographer or even a seasoned photographer because there's so many advanced features like the color profile, the color grading option, which used to be called split toning, the tone curves, the RGB individual tone curves that you can get into. Now there's the new refined saturation slider in the tone curves. So I can go in there with something like thick, go nuts with a crazy steep S curve, but then take back the refined saturation. So what it's doing is it's really making the contrast thick, but it's not over saturating the colors at the same time. It's making it just right. And there's a lot of hidden features like that I made available in these new presets.
Well, that goes back to people always being like, I could just create my own. You absolutely could. Please
for sure.
do.
Yeah.
But what Steven's going in and taking 2, 3, 4 hours working on one of these to tweak all the stuff to get it set out to you guys to make it easy. What I'll say before we move on is, even at the very beginning during FroPack 1, I barely used any of the presets until I started to click on Skittles and to realize that, this does help me, and it does make my stuff look better, because I was looking at my edit that I would do myself, and then I would put it to the edit that I then did with like Skittles or whatever I decided to use, and I'm like, fuckity fuck. This is better than what I can do.
I mean, Skittles was pretty much created from my go-to personal preset that I would use for the radio station when I would shoot shows and stuff like that. Just a little more of the lifted shadows and highlights taken down, so it worked. It was more meant for landscapes, to be honest, when we first came out with it, where some of these newer presets fix that.
Yeah, so they'll be available, not yet, soon. It'll be fronosphoto.com/fropack4. So if you just keep refreshing that at some point, not this week, it might show up before I announce it, so you might be able to buy it sooner.
Yeah.
But we'll probably announce it on the podcast and via the text, probably the text line first, to get people to test it, because it's just easier. That's 313-710-9729. I will end up doing a camera giveaway. Is going to be announced. It's later in the year, but it's going to tie in with the presets this time around. No purchase will be necessary to do that. And if you've already made purchases in the past of presets, you're already going to be entered at least once or 3 times if you own each one of the Fro packs. And there will be a free entry, which we'll go over in the future. But what, Steve?
And I do want to bring up why I specifically like adjusting all of the sliders versus making a custom profile and say something like Photoshop and then bringing that into Lightroom and then having basically everything reset to 0 and you're starting with just a profile and that's the preset. I like personally doing the sliders because you can then go in there and tweak if it's too harsh or too little. You can adjust each slider individually, or again, use that overall amount slider in the top left corner of Lightroom and you can bring it down or bring it up. Where the profiles, you're pretty much stuck and it's baked in the file and you have to start from there. You can't really go backwards.
All good stuff. I forgot to mention something I did in Vegas.
Oh,
because like
tip a hooker?
I mentioned. No, I didn't have to tip a hooker. So my friends out there, there's one guy. He's directing the Coach Raveling documentary. He was in Vegas. He's like, you want to come out with us later? I'm like, I don't like going out. He calls me. It's like 11:30 already. He's like, I'm going to swing by and grab you. So I knew that I had my flight early in the morning. I'm like, whatever, I'll go out. What do I have to lose, right? No big deal.
Yeah.
I am afraid of things sometimes. Like, I don't like clubs of any kind. So they take me to a club. He's a black guy, and we're meeting up with his friends. We go into a club in, and that's pertinent to the story. That's why I mention it. We go to the Arts District, and the place is called like Cork and Thorn, or Thorn and Cork. I believe by day it's a flower shop, and by night it turns into a nightclub,
really?
A hip hop club. Yeah, with hip hop. And so so they have security at the door, which I have no problem with security wearing flak jackets and having guns. Like, that's normal these days.
Oh, yeah.
And I rather have that, people getting searched to go in. And so I take everything out of my pockets. I'm sleeveless. And the one woman, she's like,
do I got to check these guns right here?
Yeah, I'm like, she's like, he's got nothing. She's like, his pants and shirt are so tight, he's got no place to put anything. So that's what she said to me. And I'm like, you're right, exactly. So I go in, I'm looking around, I'm sitting there, I go, I think I'm the only white person here. And I am literally the only white person in the building.
You are the minority.
Which is totally fine.
Sure.
Mind you, I have the first or second best afro. It just so happens that the other photographer girl that we were hanging out with, she so happens to have some amazing freaking hair. So we were just sitting there talking. She and I talked for quite a while, which was awesome. And she had great hair. I have a great ass for that type of place. There was a lot of ass grindage going on in there that you don't see at white clubs because white girls don't have the ass to do that. And I'll say this.
So you fit right in, huh?
I loved it. I think it's a freaking great atmosphere. Personally, I've said it before when I was at that Jazzco, that one club many years ago when I had the slick back hair and I was like 22 and I was the only white guy in a jazz club. I felt better there than I would at some frat party ever, because I don't want to be around frat white people. I just don't like them, right?
So they didn't find a white hood in your backpack and say, does this belong to you?
That's not mine. That's not mine. It's a
road
deep
trip
cut
reference, by the way,
trip.
people.
I absolutely loved being there. And someone did come up to me and was like, I'm a big fan. I love your work.
Cool.
That was great. So that was awesome. I will tell you that modern hip hop I think is shit, and I will tell you that 90s
It's like the scream rap, right? Something like that, like scream.
It's mumble rap.
Mumble
it's
rap.
Just
that's it. Yeah.
Terrible. Except, yeah. So not very good. I'm not a Meek Mill fan, and I know in Philly that's like a sacrilegious thing to say.
How dare
I just
you.
feel Meek Mill is all about yelling his stuff to you, and I like early Kanye is like, holy shit, Graduation. You're yeah, that album is revolutionary and amazing. But 90s hip hop, when they played that, I would get up and I'd be dancing. So that was cool. But I'll say what went through my mind and let me finish the whole thing before anybody gets offended. I felt like, am I safe here from am I going to get shot standpoint? And that's not because it's black people and black people have guns. No, see, Steven's giving me the face. I say the same thing when I go to a gay club. If I'm at Woody's, which is a mix of all types of people,
what about an all-white club?
I'm worried. I'm not there yet, Steven. I'm getting down the list. If I'm at a gay club, I'm worried that someone's going to come in and shoot everybody because it's a gay club and there's a lot of white supremacist fucks that want to do some damage and kill people. So I worry in that situation. I go to a white club down south. Am I worried that there's some, anti-Semites down in there that could be there with guns? Yeah, I worry about places like that. I worry when I'm in a crowd.
Just riding all the stereotypes, huh?
Yes, I'm doing it, Steven. I'm making a point here. Is like, I worry, I'm checking exits wherever I go. It doesn't matter whether it's a white club, a gay club, or a black club. A Jewish club. I'm definitely checking exits at a Jewish club. Hello, Moishi. What are you doing? Hello, Moishi. I will say, though, in Israel, you feel some of the safest in Israel because the difference between being
you have
in
a giant
Israel,
wall around you.
well, no. The difference between being in Israel and being in a club in the United States is everybody has a gun in Israel. Because
everyone's part of the military, right?
Well, or was once part of the military. If you're in current military, I believe you carry your weapon at all times, but it's exposed. So that everybody has a gun. Israelis love yelling at each other. They'll never pull their gun on each other. But when you come to a club in the United States, you don't know who's packing, who's hiding a gun and who's concealing a gun. So that's why I feel better over there in Israel at a club, because everybody has a gun, and that gun is only for one reason: to stop a terrorist coming down the street. That's why they all have guns.
Well, and just to finalize your point, it's scary just to be confined in a small space packed with full of people in general. You never know what's going to happen these days with all the active shooters going on.
Yes, but I'm just telling you where my mindset was, and I know most people don't verbalize it, but I'm just saying that one of the things that goes through my mind in just about every club and even at the movie theater, I worry because remember the one douchebag that came to a movie theater and killed all these people?
Something like that, yeah.
A lot. Like, I worry about that. Concerts in Vegas, right? Just shooting people at that country show.
I'm telling you, man, I was there a week before that country show at the iHeartRadio Festival.
You were.
I was right there on that very stage.
Yep.
Scary
and so
stuff.
Anyway, that's the reason I made it. I loved being in that club. I will go back any day of the week. I prefer going there than to a white club all day. What? Why? What? I'm half black, Steven, okay?
1% from my ancestry test.
It's there somewhere. No, but then my friend, she took me home. The other, not the director, the other girl, she took me back to my hotel.
Who had the better hair, you or her?
Fuck, she's got good hair. Did you see her hair? Did I send you her picture?
I don't know who she is or what she looks like now.
Oh, well, let me show you. Let me show you up to my camera.
Her hair's way better than yours.
She's also much taller than me.
She looks like a model.
Yeah, I mean, she's very attractive.
But she probably actually gets her haircut too. When's the last time you got your haircut?
I haven't had my haircut. I got to ask her if she gets her haircut.
Trim the ends, man. Cut off the dead hair.
Totally ask her out on a date.
Yeah.
Totally. If I was in Vegas. She's cool. She's also a photographer as well. I mean, unfortunately, she shoots with Nikon, which made it difficult to shoot slam ball. But what can I tell you?
Oh, there it is. He's always got to bring it up somehow.
But here's a good upside for Nikon. Tamron announcing the development of the 35-150 Z lens.
Look at that transition.
That's a great transition, Steven.
Yeah.
Tamron announced the development, which means we already know this lens has been developed because they had it out for the E mount, and they're now going to put it out for the Z mount, which this is one of the most impressive lenses I've ever used. And I don't mean that from like quality standpoint. I mean from the fact that it's a 35 f2 and at about 39 millimeters is when it goes to like 2.2 or 2.5. So you have an f2 all the way to there, but then all the way out at 150, it's a 2.8. So you go to 2 to 2.8. It's like, it's amazing.
This again,
for a variable aperture lens.
This would have been my ideal concert lens. If I had to bring one lens, I would probably bring this thing. Being 35-150, you don't really need that extra ultra wide end, and you really never need that super telephoto 200 millimeter end. So that 35-150 is such a sweet spot for concert photography.
I do think you need a little wide. You need one other wide lens to do some stuff.
But again, if I had to pick like one lens, well, maybe a 24-70 or something, but 35-150
f2. But even the 28-70 f2 isn't wide enough for certain concert situations.
Yeah. I mean, even when I would shoot with like a 16-35 on the Canon, that 16 was never really wide enough either.
Yeah. What I will say, though, from using it with the Sony A1 is I did feel that the focus was not as tight when I was shooting fast, like 15 frames a second, because it's going to be limited. It's not going to get the same 30 frames a second that you should get with a G Master lens.
But you're only going to be limited if you're shooting with an A1 or an A9. So
right. But what I felt is that it was just, there were subtle times where I felt it wasn't as tack sharp as I wanted it to be. I also felt that the contrast and tones were not as saturated and vibrant when I was done editing as it would with a G Master. But in an everyday situation, I bought the lens. I personally bought the lens from Alan's camera because I was shooting Sony at the time and then I switched to Canon. But if I was to travel, there is no reason why that 35 to if Canon made a 35-150 f2 to 2.8 that was amazing RF, that would go along with my 28-70, but like then you would have the rub, like, do I use a 28-70? Or like, what do you use?
And I know they're rumoring right now like the 70-135 or something f2, right? Part of that f2 trinity, if it ever actually happens. That would be an awesome lens to have. If you had the 28-70 and then say the 70-135, all f2, that range is pretty much fully covered. Now, the only thing is being f2 and being more on the telephoto end or on the extreme wide end, it's going to be a huge, thick lens. That barrel is going to be insane.
How many C's?
Thick with 3 C's. All caps.
I mean, I would rather have them not start at 70, but start at like 85.
Or give me 85 to 150. Yeah. Yep.
85 to 150. Like, I rather do that. Give me a little extra, because we already have the 35 to 70. You don't need to be exactly at 70 when you're picking up your other lenses.
35 to 70? What do you mean?
Sorry, 28 to 70 and then a 70 to 200. Like, just because, there's going to be a gap. People, I remember back in the day selling lenses, I remember back in the day thinking that I would have a gap, and I'm like, the people are like, that doesn't matter. Like,
or it's like, okay, 5 millimeters. Move 5 feet closer, and there's your gap.
Exactly.
It's not a big deal.
It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a big thing for Nikon.
Agreed.
I think this is a great lens for the everyday shooter on any of the cameras that they have, regardless of how their autofocus works. This is an unbelievable range for travel. It's not going to be great for birds or anything, but shit, one lens to rule them all. This is the closest thing you can get to.
Do we know the price yet for it?
The other one is $18.99 for the Sony. If I had to guess, $19.99 or maybe $100 less. You never know.
I doubt it's going to be less because I think what Nikon is doing is they're charging like an extra $100 or $2 for a licensing fee because all of the other Tamron 2.8 lenses have been about $100 or $200 more than the Sony versions. And I think, again, it's because they're saying, hey, you can use the mount, you can make a lens, but we're going to charge you a little extra.
Yeah.
But that's great. I mean, Nikon's killing it with their lens lineup right now. I think on the roadmap, too, there's still that 35-1.2 that's supposed to be coming soon. If they add that...
And a 135 is rumored.
Like a 1.8 or something like that?
That's been rumored for a while. Yeah, like a 1.8. Well,
then they have everything
it only
at that
makes
point,
sense.
Pretty much.
Well, it makes sense, Stephen, because Sony has a 135-1.8, which is the best Sony lens ever. And then you have Canon has a 135-1.8. So it only makes sense that Nikon would probably have a 135-1.8. They're going to have the most well-rounded lineup of all the systems. I mean, it's hard to beat Sony right now in terms of having third-party options. I still prefer my choices with Canon, but Nikon is loaded with glass.
I think Canon needs to catch up, though, at this point. They really went crazy with lenses the first few years, and then they've slowed down, I'd say, the past few years because they've been focusing more on the bodies. Now, on the opposite end, Nikon needs more of the lower-end bodies. So 135-1.8
they had, the 100-300 they've had. But yeah, there's no wide angle still.
I still love what Nikon's doing though with like the 400 4.5, like the more affordable versions, you know? The 800 6.3.
800 6.3.
Yeah.
Yep. So speaking of more affordable versions of things, I took out the R100 and the 100-400 yesterday to the Phillies game. And you know what goes through my mind when I take something like this to shoot professionally? That I look like a fucking moron.
Because look at this loser with this cheap little lens and body.
That's what I think people are thinking about me.
I'm
Where's
surprised.
Your big
you
glass?
Of all people, usually you're like, I don't give a shit what anyone thinks.
I don't care what people think, but I'm aware inside, deep down inside,
You're aware of what people think.
I'm aware of what people might think. Like, because I say it all the time, you don't look professional. But you said it. What'd you say to me this morning when you looked at the pictures?
So you sent me the pictures first without telling me what you shot them with. I looked at them this morning.
You were at the game too.
I was at the game, correct, but actually just watching it, not photographing it. I would have never known that you shot this with an APS-C camera or a shitty lower end zoom lens. I thought you still shot them with a higher end like R3 or R5 or R6, whatever it may be, just maybe stop down a little bit aperture wise, because I could tell with the fans in the background, they were a little more prevalent in the photo than they normally are when you're shooting with like a 400-2.8 or something like that. But besides that, it looks pretty sharp on my phone. Everything looked fine. The colors popped. Everything looks great to me. I was shocked when I found out this morning that it was the R100 with a kit lens, pretty much.
And thick added to it.
And thick.
Those are on Instagram. You can check them out right now. My reasoning for taking I needed to get out and shoot. I had something else to do, but I felt like I didn't want to be alone for the rest of the night. And I'm
just glad you did it, because typically you'll take like a shitty body. This is a $479 body, you know, and you'll pair it with something like a $3,000 lens, which in my opinion doesn't really make sense. So I always try and force you, hey, use like a shittier kit lens that might work well paired with this camera for most people, and then use your expensive glass too, just to show the point of glass. But last night you actually just pulled out the shittier glass and stuck with that, and it worked out great.
Well, before I left, I had the 400-2.8 ready to go with the adapter. Then I was like, well, there's a 100-500.
Let's add a $10,000 lens on this $479 body.
And then I was like, oh, here is the 100-400. And I put it back because I was going to take the 100-500. And then I'm like, fuck this. I'm like, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to take the shitty glass. And I took it. And I won't say, the results are good. I got good results. I will say it's not an easy camera to shoot. There is no touchscreen on this camera. It is using Digic 8 processor, not Digic X processor. So in terms of, it still does lock-on tracking, not as well. I did have some back focusing stuff where I missed on the background because it was like hard to see where the focusing point was going. I couldn't direct it, but I shot manual, like 2000 ISO to give myself a 1/2000th of a second. Because you got to remember, this lens is a 5.6 to f8. So when I'm zoomed out to 400, which is 560 millimeter equivalent, I'm at f8.
And this was technically a night game too, so the light wasn't as strong as it normally would be in the high noon.
Only for the first inning was there light on first base, and then the shadows fully engrossed the field.
Yeah.
It was still light out, but I had to have a higher shutter speed for sports, which meant I had to program a higher ISO. I did put it in auto. I did put the whole camera in auto to see what it would do. And then you're like, why are you going to F9? Why are you doing 1/900th of a second at F9 at ISO 2500? You're like, but that's what people would shoot in full auto.
Sure.
I was getting like 2 frames a second, even though they say it's 6.
I was going to say that probably hindered you the most was the incredibly slow frame rate, right?
It was
because it's 6.5 frames per second in one shot, as in not continuous autofocus, and then in servo AFC, it is 3.5 frames per second. I believe
that's
they
what
quote
it felt
as.
like.
So,
and with focusing, it felt like 2 seconds. And so, like, I was on Bryce Harper, who's playing first base, to dive. Like, I was waiting for a dive. I'm just planting myself on him, and it actually happened. And you could see I have the shot of him laid out. I would have preferred being in the spot by home plate because that would have been a better background, because the background looks terrible. Plus, he didn't come up with the ball anyway. And the background's so distracting at F8 that it's not even funny.
Yeah, and an APS-C sensor on top of that.
Right. But the other images, like getting a JT Real Muto, the catcher, with the helmet, the mask coming off for like coming from behind the plate. That's not a shot you always see because you're not really focused there all the time. Some of the pictures just worked. You just have to, is it a great camera? The answer is no, it's not a great camera.
Of course.
But for someone who wants to get a real camera and a lens, and the mother, the father, or the other that wants to go shoot their kids or someone out in the field, this is going to do it. But it still comes down to education. You can give me any camera and I'm going to end lens and I'm going to figure out how to get great results. And that's what I try to strive for and try to educate on and try to teach, is that it takes time. But if you learn the fundamentals and basics of photography, you're going to set yourself up for years to come, and you can use any camera.
I still think, though, with this camera, they missed the mark of not putting in a very angled touchscreen, because everybody starting off, like, this is going to be the starter camera for most families. For someone that probably never really was properly trained with photography and they're coming from a smartphone, their entire life of taking pictures was probably using a touchscreen on a smartphone or something like that. Or even like a college kid coming up, like they might only be able to afford this $500 camera. So again, they're used to touching everything, zooming in, pinching and zooming, very angle, selfie type stuff. I just think they really missed the mark on adding that touchscreen in here and making it very angle. Again, I get it. They're trying to keep the price down.
They had to.
And the other thing is, I'm really interested to see how the focus worked, because it's Digic 8, so they're basically giving it the latest dual pixel AF, but on a much older processor. So was it decent? Like, was it really bouncing around like crazy? I really would love to see that EVF footage one day. I know we didn't record it for this one, but we'll have to try it for another game.
I didn't record the EVF because I just wanted to shoot. I won't tell you that it's the greatest autofocus ever. I don't expect
it to be either for that price.
I will tell you that if I was slightly moving or jiggling the camera while taking a picture, it definitely wasn't going to be sharp. And so when I settled in more, it was a much sharper image. So and there's image stabilization in the lens, not in the body.
No IBIS,
part of it was when if I moved ever so slightly while shooting, that picture was not going to be tack sharp. But when I settled in, locked myself in, and took it at first base or whatever, the picture was fine. Like, I could send you the raw files and you'll be like, cool. But I had to go through, and there's images where the guy's running towards me. It's like one picture he's out. Mind you, I'm only getting 2 frames a second. And then the next one he's in. But at least it did work. The moral of the story is you need to know what the hell you're doing.
Yeah.
You got to start somewhere. I didn't have a problem with it actually not being a touchscreen. That didn't bother me because
But that's not how you shoot. Correct. You shoot like a real photographer. I'm talking about somebody who's never actually held a camera, real camera, quote unquote. I think it's going to be a struggle for them, because I think they're going to be pulling a Manny Ortiz and, holding it out and touching the screen that way, or using the very angle screen that way. But
my goal is to teach everybody to shoot the proper way, in my opinion, which is the proper way. You can fight me all fucking day long, but
I agree. And I'm really shocked that they even gave this camera an EVF, based on the price point and the demographic that they're going for.
You want to know what I noticed, Steven, when I shot vertical?
What?
It rotates the info display, even in a $479 camera.
Surprised about that.
I was like, oh, wow. Not every camera does that.
It's got the latest menu in dual pixel, I believe, so it makes sense, I guess.
Dual pixel, but it's not as good as But Sony doesn't do that, right? When you shoot vertical?
Nikon does. I don't think Sony does yet, unless it's in their latest round.
I don't know if the A1 does it. I don't know.
I don't think it would be the A1. If it was any camera, it'd probably be the A7 IV and the A7 R5, if I had to guess.
I have to check.
But
I don't recall.
The Nikons all do it now, and I think it's great.
I shot that. We got to make some other videos with that. We've got our move coming up. We've got a lot going on. Steven's got a baby coming up. There's a lot going on. So the next month is going to be a weird month. We don't know what's going to happen. Baby comes early. Steven's out. And, but we got to get our move done hopefully before baby Steven. Little baby Eckert, please stay in the freaking womb until you're supposed to come out because we got work to do.
And real quick before we wrap this up, the hard part about packing and moving is we're still trying to film videos in the meantime. So I'm trying to pack everything, but not tape all the boxes up because there's still plenty of times where I need to go find a lens for this specific review or whatever it may be. And it might be packed away somewhere. So I just can't be taping all the boxes up. Like I started to pack everything up on Friday, for example, and there were so many things I needed to use the other day when we shot something like an ND filter and extra batteries. And I'm like, oh man, I packed all of that up, but I'm glad I didn't tape all the boxes and secure everything because we still need to use a lot of that stuff moving forward before we move.
We're just trying to my thing with moving is you want to organize and prepare as much as possible to make it easier on the moving people. Like I'm not a fan of the people, not to say that the people do have someone pack them and do all their work. That's expensive, but you pay for it. In my opinion, like I think it should take a couple hours because we're going to efficiently have everything ready. Boxes where they need to be. They'll just load them out and ready to go. And then the desks, like efficient. I think it'll take days to prep the move and then only hours to actually move because we will be so efficient with packing everything and making sure everything's ready to rock. We do need someone to probably stand by the truck so that it's not left empty or not left attended here. But that's true anywhere. We just want to be careful there. So text us 313-710-9729. We had a lot to talk about. I wish there was a way to have comments to interact with people. I really do.
I know. I mean, the text line, that's kind of what that's for, but we don't get a million texts. Yeah.
That's one of the reasons I would kind of like to do a do video. But on the flip side, one of the reasons to not do is because you don't want to read the comments, but we do want to read some of these comments to get feedback.
I wish Spotify and Apple Podcasts, I wish there was some form of comment, a comment section somewhere. I know you can leave a written review on Apple Podcasts, but that's usually people trying to say how much they hate the podcast anyway. So
oh, love them. Love that. Yeah. All right, guys. We're going to wrap up 61 right now. Thank you guys very much for listening. Jared Polin, FronosPhoto.com. See ya.
Bye.